Buddha explains what are the duties or responsibilities we have to fulfill as human beings. This is called Manushya Dharma. Our duties or responsibilities and obligations. If we neglect these duties and responsibilities, we create a lot of problems, miseries, unhappiness, disappointments in our life. Because our human society, when we compare with other living beings in this universe, we can understand that we are interrelated. By fulfilling our duties and responsibilities, we maintain a healthy society and healthy family. That is why the Buddha emphasized these responsibilities and advised us not to neglect. If we really want to maintain our human dignity, Manushya Dharma, Deva Dharma, Virachhina Dharma. Animals have their way of life. They too have certain responsibilities. Although we regard them as very unfortunate living beings. Deva Dharma, divine beings, they too have some good qualities appreciated in the Buddha's teaching. Hiri Ottappa Sampanna Suddha Dhamma Samahita. These are the qualities or the virtues or the dharma of Deva, known as Deva Dharma. Hiri and Ottappa, shame and fear of committing evil, immoral and wicked things. And Sukha Dhamma, purity in thoughts, words and action. If these three qualities are there, they maintain the higher qualities known as Deva Dharma. And those human beings who maintain such good qualities also appreciate and uphold such good qualities. Now, what are these qualities or the responsibilities introduced by the Buddha for us to uphold? They are very simple. I know you have heard more than 1,000 times. Even then, many people neglect, overlook, if not, they behave in such a way by ignoring their responsibilities. The first duty is your duties towards your father and mother. The Buddha, when he wanted to convey his message, he did not neglect the society, the family life, your way of life. He introduced the Dhamma in such a way for you to cultivate your way of life step by fulfilling your duties and responsibilities. Otherwise, you cannot jump at once to maintain purity in your mind, to gain knowledge and understanding, and to attain sainthood or final salvation without fulfilling your initial responsibilities and duties. By neglecting your father and mother, so whatever method you practice as your religion, the foundation of your religious way of life is very shaky. You can perform lot of meritorious deeds. You can meditate. You can gain wonderful knowledge in the Dhamma. By neglecting your duties or allowing your father and mother to suffer. That is why the Buddha wanted to start from the very beginning how to cultivate your religious way of life. Therefore, within your capacity, there are various ways and means for you to fulfill your duties. There are some people who say, our parents have not done anything for us. They have neglected us. They have not given us education. They did not attend to us when we were young. Why should we support them? This argument is not very healthy. By knowing that they have not done their duties and responsibilities towards you, if you can fulfill your duties toward them as your father and mother, everybody appreciates your understanding. That is the beauty. Therefore, you should not neglect your duties under any circumstances. Not only your duty, this is also a meritorious deed. You gain lot of merits by attending or ministering or providing facilities towards your father and mother. Again, in various other discourses, what the Buddha says, Brahmati Mata Pitaro. Brahma is the God. Mata Pitar, mother and father. So, father and mother are the living God on this earth. Regard them as God. Again, in Hindu philosophy, also mention the same thing in Sanskrit. Matrudevo bhava, Pitrudevo bhava. Regard your father as Deva or God. Regard your mother as God. Give them due respect. And other religions also, Christianity and Islam. I think you can remember. Prophet Muhammad one day answered this question posed by his own daughter. She asked, you always talk about heaven. Can you tell me where this heaven is? Muhammad said, heaven is at the feet of your parents. The deep meaning is, those who attend to their father and mother never miss the heaven. That is the answer. So you can see in every religion how they have encouraged the devotees and the followers to fulfill their duties towards the father and mother. That is the first Manushya Dharma, human responsibilities for us to maintain as our duty. Then the second duty is to look after your children. You can understand what is happening even here in this country. Child abuse, torturing their own children, killing them, throwing away, neglecting their children. some parents can enjoy their life. Recently, you might have read, a father who wanted to drink liquor asked the small children to go out and beg as beggars to collect money for him to drink. And he tortured his own children. And mothers, we have read in the newspaper how they throw away babies into dustbin or drain or toilets. Animals never do such thing. Animals, even at the risk of their life, fight for their young ones, to protect their young ones. You can see how these cats and dogs and birds try to protect their kids or young ones. That is their intrinsic or natural feeling, not artificial. Motherly feeling. It is not artificial. Mother is willing to die for the sake of her children. That is natural feeling. Mother never gets fed up with her children. So by considering these good qualities, it is our duty to attend to them. So at the same time, father and mother also must learn how to fulfill their duties, their responsibilities towards the children, without neglecting them, their health, their food, their education and environment. They have to keep eye on them, to pay attention, to pave the way for them to come up, to live in the society as understanding good citizens. So, when we observe very carefully the behavior of many of these young people, their family background, we can find out many of them were neglected by their own parents. They were not given proper education and training and discipline. That is why they behave in this way. So, parents are responsible for bringing them into this world. Remember, father and mother cannot produce children. They bring their children to this world. They have their own life, own character, own way of thinking. Father and mother cannot give this. But they are responsible for bringing them into this world. They are bound to look after them and fulfill all their duties. Then you can ask this question: who is advising us to do this? Here, the Buddha. So what is the question? Can we say the Buddha did not neglect his own son? People can ask this question. The very day when the son was born, he renounced the world, gone away from the palace. So people say he has neglected, deserted his wife and the child. Well, he did not go away just because he got fed up with them. He never thought that they are unwanted or nuisance. He never had any misunderstanding. But he knew, by staying here in this palace, I won't be able to gain my enlightenment. enlightenment is not for my own sake, my own freedom, my own pleasure. That enlightenment is to serve, to save the whole mankind. So his compassion, his understanding is so deep. So he did not confine his compassion towards only his wife or his child or his family. He extended this toward the whole mankind, the whole world. So after gaining his enlightenment, he came back and paved the way for them to get rid of their worldly sufferings, not only for one life. His wife, his child, his father, his brother, stepmother, all of them followed him and shown the correct path for them to find out their salvation. Therefore, how can we say he has neglected his duties and responsibilities? So the third one is not to neglect his wife. Again, the Buddha says, don't neglect your wife. The Buddha has neglected his wife. Just now I told you, when he renounced his wife, did not accuse him, did not blame. She cried. Yes, it is natural. But she wanted to follow the same way of life in respect, in honor of her husband. When she came to know that her husband take only one meal a day, she also followed the same way. I respect my husband by following his footsteps. When she came to know that her husband doesn't use any valuable jewelries, she also removed all her valuable jewelries. Was wearing a very simple clothes. When she came to know that he has shaven, cut off his hair, she also cut off. Therefore, how can we say she cursed him or she abused him or he never regarded her husband as enemy? She thought it is her duty to allow him to fulfill his aspiration of becoming a Buddha without hindering, without disturbing, because he is going to serve the whole mankind. So she thought it is selfishness if I interrupt and disturb. This is called understanding. However, husband should not neglect his wife. This is 2,500 years old human way of life. Because at that time, wife completely depend on her husband. They were not independent. Today, many of those wives also go out and work and earn, and some of them are independent. This is the modern way of life. But this independent way of life sometimes creates a lot of problems. They abuse this, they misuse this, they take the advantage, go out of the way because of that independence. Anyway, it is up to them. By maintaining this, if you know how to behave as obedient, understanding wife, there is no harm of going out and earning There are many understanding wives. But at the same time, husbands also neglect, overlook, if not torture his wife. There are thousands of cases. Always innocent ladies come and explain to others, asking some solution, how to settle this problem. Husband is like this, never support the children. So the Buddha did not overlook social ill in the society. He wanted to find out what is happening in our human society and pointed out, these are your duties, your responsibilities, you should not neglect them if you want to maintain a healthy family life, household life, or healthy society. So by neglecting your children, if you are going to enjoy your life, by neglecting your wife, if you are going to enjoy your life, you get into trouble. You have guilty conscience, guilty feeling in your mind that you are wrong, although you could manage to escape. That is why the Buddha has pointed out. So, husband and wife, both are equally responsible for this. Then the next one is mutual understanding between husbands and wife. Whether they are poor or rich makes no difference. If that understanding is there, because one gives moral support to the other one, and they are willing to share pain and pleasure both equally. When there are troubles and problems and pains and shortcomings, they do not grumble, they do not accuse the other, husband or wife. At the same time, pleasure, happiness, also they share equally. Then they do not feel the burdens or shortcomings in their married life. There are poor families who lead a very peaceful, happy, contented married life or household life. There are very rich families, but husband and wife are loggerheads. They talk to each other just like cock and bull and cannot look at each other's face directly, always hinting and passing caustic remarks, attacking each other, but they have more than enough things. Where is happiness? Where is pleasure? Where is happy married life in such families? They can increase the number of wives, but do you think they really enjoy their life? Everywhere bluffing and cheating and swindling and telling lies, but in the end get into trouble. You can see the Buddha has not neglected even this. This mutual understanding is the most important things in our household life. The next one is, we should not neglect our relatives, our uncles and aunties and grandfathers, grandmothers and brothers and sisters, because their cooperation, their understanding, their moral supports are needed. When we are in trouble, when we are sick, we need their support. So when we fulfill our duties, our responsibilities towards our relatives, when they are in trouble, when they need our support, they also come to help us, give their support, without allowing us to get into trouble. So this relationship, blood relationship, gives some sort of inner feeling in our life. Therefore we cannot neglect our sisters and brothers and uncles and aunties and some other relatives. So within our capacity, we must try to fulfill our responsibilities or duties towards them. The next one, respect the elders. Why? Elders have more experience. Although your knowledge is very advanced in your education, but their experience in household life, married life, worldly life is far better than your understanding. There are many things you have to learn from them. To seek their advice when you are at crossroads, when you do not know what to do. Elders can tell you, according to their experience, when they had to come across this kind of problem, how they could manage to overcome such problems. Not only that, elders need the support from younger generations. When they are sick, when they are weak, when they are poor, it is our duty to do something to release their sufferings, their pains, their shortcomings. Then they can develop their confidence, they can spend the rest of their life with hopes and confidence by knowing at least there are some people who are willing to support them, listen to them, respect them. So one of the qualities or the virtues of Manushya Dharma or the human responsibilities is to give due respect to elders. Of course, in our Asian society, these are very highly respected, regarded in those days. In fact, I remember it's about 50 to 60 years ago, when we were very young, small children. Young people do not smoke in front of the elders. Young people do not sit down with their elders or parents. They never take liquor in front of the elders or parents. They never use vulgar or ugly or dirty words in front of the elders and parents. This is the way how they respected elderly people. Today, our way of life is changing, but the society is not healthy because of this attitude. We have neglected so many things. People may say this is an old fashion, but do you think the old methods, old systems are bad? They are excellent, meaningful duties, manners, traditions, customs amongst those elders. Few hundred or even few thousand years ago, how they upheld to maintain a healthy society. Today we can see the bad effect in the society. Now come to the departed ones. Those who have departed from this world, dead and gone. Only human beings can do this. Others have no such feeling or idea in their mind that we can do something or we must do something for our departed parents or elders, because they cannot understand. Even before these religions come into existence, people had some sort of fear or suspicion by thinking these departed persons can influence them to create troubles, sicknesses. So what they did, to avoid these problems, they started to do some offering and praying and worship. The idea is not to disturb them. They could not extend more than that. Later, they thought not only to avoid or to escape from the troubles and problems and disturbances, we can gain support from our departed, protection, or some information. Then they could manage to communicate with some of their departed relatives. Some of them found out that it is true. Then they developed further and further this ancestral worship, especially in China and Japan and Korea. In those countries, that belief is very, very strong than in other parts of the world. So whatever it may be, out of gratitude or in appreciation of the services that they have rendered towards us, so after their departure, we do something by performing rites and rituals and performing some ceremonies or praying or worshipping or offerings. Later, when Buddhism come into existence, the Buddha has introduced an entirely different method. People never heard this earlier. Before that, they used to pray to God, asking His favor towards our departed ones, or to take him to heaven. Earlier there was another method practiced by some people. They used to pray to King of Hell, do some offering, and appeal him not to accommodate our departed person so and so, if happened to go there, release him. Not a bad idea, is it? Anyway, Chinese are very clever people in this world. Because they are the only people who could manage to open a bank in hell and produce a special currency note for hell. Others could not do that. Only Chinese. So they can use this currency note only in hell. That is the idea. Instead of praying to the king of hell, they started to use this bribery, started bank account in hell, any amount the king can draw at any time. How many million you need? Yes, please release him. So, the Buddha advised us, simply by performing rites and rituals, spending money, wasting your time, simply by worshipping or praying or asking a God to release him, the departed one. According to the Buddha's teaching, departed persons won't be benefited. Only for our own satisfaction we perform all these duties. He says, if we really want to support, assist the departed ones, what we have to do some meritorious deeds, help others, release others' sufferings, those who are poor, feed them, those who are sick, attend to them, and those who can't afford to maintain their families, support them, and practice charity, to release others' suffering, to educate them, religious institute, to understand what is the noble life. All these are meritorious deeds. The merits that you gain by performing such meritorious deeds, you can transfer to your departed one. This is the method introduced by the Buddha. Formerly, they never had this method. Today, all over the world, Buddhist and non-Buddhist also, do some meritorious deeds in the name of their departed one. The merits that we gain, transfer. And how to transfer, how to receive, this is the biggest problem. From the Buddhist point of view, this is only a mental communication. So when we do some meritorious deeds, always that departed person's name is in our mind. From the very beginning, we are doing this for the benefit of so and so, so and so. So these mental waves we are radiating, and again, the departed person's mental waves also radiating from there. And these mental waves, vibration, combine, harmonize. Then they gain some sort of happiness, confidence, by knowing, by gaining this energy. It is an energy, mental vibration that we radiate after gaining merits is an energy. This energy rejuvenate, strengthen for them to get rid of that unfortunate condition if they are in such unfortunate state. Then they get the chance to carry on their life without suffering. Without suffering means reduce their suffering. We cannot completely eradicate all their suffering. And there are certain other places that we cannot release them by transferring merit. Those who are born as animals, we cannot release them by transferring merits because they cannot receive. So according to the Buddha, those who are in hell also cannot release until they spend certain period there, according to the karma that they have committed. We cannot release them. Those who are born as human beings do not depend on others' merits. I have enough karma for me to lead my life, the karma that I have accumulated to be born as human being. Therefore, I do not depend on another person's marriage. Those devas who spend worldly and pleasurable life also do not depend on others' karma, merits. They have enough merits. Then you can ask, why do we invite the devas to share the merits accrued by us? Not because they haven't got enough good karma. So when we remember them, invite them to share the happiness that we gain by performing these meritorious deeds, they will come to know, they will be happy. Devatānukamsito poso sada bhadrani passati. Here the saying of the Buddha. Those devotees who remember the devas, invite them to share the happiness. In return, they look after, they attend to certain things for us to avoid, to get rid of certain problems. That is the only thing they can do. God or devas cannot give us knowledge or wisdom or salvation or heaven or nirvana from the Buddhist point of view. They can do certain worldly things for our prosperity, for our protection, for our worldly life. Yes, there are many things that God can do. So when we invite the devas to share the merits, yes, they will be very happy. But here, we are trying to transfer these merits to departed ones who are unfortunate, who have not accumulated enough good merits to enjoy their life, who have not committed very bad karmas to be born in hell or animal kingdom or certain other unfortunate states in between these two states. They are the ones who are waiting to receive the merits. They depend on us. That is why the Buddha said, don't neglect. Since we do not know where they are, whether they really need our support or not, we fulfill our duty. Then we feel very happy, thinking we have done our duty. They have done so much for us, so we also have done our duties after they are dead. If they need our support, they gain. If not, we are benefited, we have not wasted anything. Because we have done some respectable, meritorious deeds without wasting anything. This is the Buddhist method. This is the idea of remembering our departed ones. This is also one of the Manushya Dharma, human duties. The next one, to remember devas. People always say, Buddhists do not believe in God. They are wrong. We believe. But our belief or our concept is entirely different. Not like others. Here you can understand the difference. Others depend on God for everything. From the Buddhist point of view, we do not depend on God for everything. Because we know what the God can do, what the devas can do. So we respect them, we can worship them, no harm. We do some offerings in the name of the devas, there's no harm at all. But we know what we are seeking. They can keep an eye on us when we are going to get into trouble. we get the chance to avoid. And we do not know who is responsible for that. For our worldly life, their protection and their supports are important for us to carry on our life, because our life are in danger. Life is uncertain. Therefore, always we seek some sort of guidance, protection from others. But the God and Devas cannot send us to heaven or nirvana to find out our salvation. We had to work for that. Therefore, by worshipping or praying to any God, we never ask them to take us to heaven, because it doesn't work. We had to work for that. Otherwise, how nice, very lazy, just lie down and go on praying and praying without doing anything, asking God to take us to heaven or nirvana. It doesn't work. So now you can see the difference between Buddhist concept of heaven and devas and other religious beliefs. So, the Buddhism never go against the concept of God or devas, but we know the limit. So we do not depend on God or devas for everything. So it is one of the duties of human beings to respect the devas by knowing their limited power. Devas and God have worldly powers. From the Buddhist point of view, they are not holy. They are very powerful, worldly living beings, supernatural living beings, subject to the universal worldly condition, anicca, dukkha, anatta. They are also not free from changes, decay and death. Difference is, they can spend long periods, millions of years, and we can stay only a very short period. And their way of life is very pleasurable. Less problem, less pain. But in our case we have so many problems, more pain than pleasure, than happiness. But we get the chance to understand the real nature of existence. Then we gain more knowledge and understanding and wisdom. The next one, by fulfilling all these duties, as human beings, we must know how to live in the society. This is very important. Whether you are Buddhist or not, you have some duties, some disciplinary code for you to uphold. If you violate these things, you disturb others, then you also get into trouble. Others do not cooperate with you. There are certain manners, certain traditions, cultural practices upheld for thousands of years in different countries in different ways. So whenever we visit certain other countries, whenever we are going to live in another society with another nationalities or religious groups, we must know how to adjust ourselves. We should not be so stubborn to tell others, no, we are not ready to follow your way of life. Then we get into trouble. If their way of life is not harmful, not dangerous, not wicked or cruel. Our duty is to adjust ourselves, to live in that society. If that weakness is there, we get into trouble wherever we go, wherever we live. Now here we are living in a multi-racial, multi-religious, multicultural society in Malaysia. So when we live, work with others, Chinese, Indians, Malays, Europeans, again Christians, Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, and many others. There are many things we have to consider. Not to disturb others, not to create misunderstanding, not to hurt others' feelings. When we perform our festivals, our duties, our rites and rituals, our religious ceremonies, we must know how to adjust, to avoid certain misunderstanding, or not to disturb others. That is what the Buddha said. You must know how to live in the society as a cultured person. Whatever religion you have, whatever traditions you have, you must know how to behave as a cultured person. If this quality is not there, all your religious way of life is out of order. Become useless or nuisance to others. Because there are many cultured people who do not follow any religion, but they are gentlemen. Their behavior, their way of life never disturb others. Therefore, in the name of religion, in the name of your race or nationality, you should not violate or disturb others. Here, the thing that you have to learn, how to live in the society without disturbing others. In fact, you can forget everything. Your religion, your traditions, your manners. If you know how to live without disturbing others. Indirectly you observe everything. The trouble with us, we cannot live without disturbing others. Either by bluffing or swindling or cheating or robbing or disturbing or accusing or blaming. We disturb others. Then create trouble, violence, bloodshed. So all are equally responsible for these disturbances. See how beautifully the Buddha has pointed out. First, he taught us how to live in this world as human beings. If you cannot do this, all your meditation, all your religious services, all your festivals are useless. Last one. I think you can remember, among those 4 kinds of happiness that we experience in our worldly life, the same thing Buddha has pointed out here. 4 kinds of worldly happiness that we experience. Atti Sukha, Bhoga Sukha, Ananda Sukha, Anavajja Sukha. Anavajja Sukha. Atti Sukha, by working hard, we earn something and collect and deposit. Either lands or houses or jewelries or valuable things. Then you gain happiness and contentment. The religious teacher who has renounced the worldly life, giving you this advice, because he knew what you need. This is your worldly happiness. If you want to live in this world, you must have this happiness. Second one, bhoga sukha. By spending what you have earned, don't be stingy. You can eat and enjoy your life. Have nice food, nice dress, nice houses, no harm at all. Have nice music. Who says it is wrong? It is against religion. Which religion says it is wrong? Here, bhoga sukha, enjoy your life. But enjoy your life in respectable way. Remember again, without violating your religious principles, without disturbing others, not at the cost of others' life or happiness. So you must know how to enjoy your life, respectable way. The Buddha has given green light. You never commit any sin by enjoying your life without disturbing others. Anana sukha. When you spend, you must know your limit. Not to borrow from others, not to depend on others. You lose your freedom, indebted. You have to go and hide. No courage. Whether you are rich or poor, you must know your income and expenditure, how to adjust without borrowing from others. That freedom, when you come to know you are not indebted, you are free from this. The confidence and happiness that you gain is remarkable. That independent life. Last one. Anavadya sukha. All the other three kinds of happiness become useless if you have not led a respectable life, righteous way of life, without harming others. You can become a multimillionaire. You can enjoy your life. You never borrow anything from others. You enjoy all the three kind of happiness. But you have done lot of damages to others, disturb others, by swindling others, cheating others. There is no peace in your mind. There is no real happiness in your mind. Guilty conscience are there. That is the happiness that we experience at the last moment when we are going to die. So at the last moment, other three kinds of happiness completely disappear. We cannot enjoy at that moment. But this is the happiness we maintain, because this happiness gives confidence, and we can die with hopes and confidence, without fear, without worrying, without confusion in our mind. Because we know our next existence, our next life never become miserable. That is the most important. So if you know how to lead a respectable life without disturbing others, we can die peacefully with confidence.